And I called my other half and I said at that time, right, I've had enough of going. And she said, great, where? So, and then just entered this Wild West, it felt like, of brokers, something I've been completely unaware of before. Heads of terms is like engagement, and completion is like getting married. So what that means is as soon as we sign off our heads of terms, we're now off market. You have to be really, really certain this is the right one for you. One of the challenges that I had was that I went direct to buyers. You lose all leverage, all negotiating position. Never get yourself into anything you haven't first worked out how to get out of. Everyone exits. You're either bought out, pushed out, or wheeled out.
Mr. Brian Hill, welcome to the Bulletproof Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you. Very, very pleased to be here.
I want to say before we get underway, I just want to say thank you to you because you've been listening to this podcast, haven't you? You saw a few kind of positive words you shared on social media, so I just want to say thanks for that. It's great.
You're welcome. I think the more people can listen to it, the better. There's great insights outside of financial planning, which are helpful and useful. Listen to.
Brian, as we get started, you've been on your own journey, your own business journey. You built a business, you've sold a business, you've written a book about the journey, and now you're advising other people. So we're really going to get into the weeds of all that during the course of our conversation. But just take us back a little bit further, because you weren't always a business owner, were you? What was your background?
Oh my gosh, back before the internet.
Yeah,
then
I remember those days.
You remember those days?
Yeah. I'm old enough. Yeah.
So back in the old days, I came out of school with the sum result of one A level, grade E. It was that bad. But that's all I needed to go into the army.
Right.
And so I joined the army. And after having spent a year in Israel on kibbutz, which was formative for a privately educated lad, and joined the army, and back in 1990 was injured out of the army, which that's all I ever wanted to do was join the army. That's my sole focus. And so when that all came tumbling down, I was a little bit stuck with what to do. So I went and ran a mountain bike shop for about 5 or 6 years and really got the grounding of business in that mountain bike shop. I mean, there were some really challenging times during that, but one of the things I really remember was how I really got to grips with what business was about. And that came about through people would come into the shop and ask for a quote, if you like, to replace the stolen bike. Right. A mountain bike stolen, a Rally Alaska, whatever it is. And can you give us a quote? We send it to the insurance company. And then one insurance company called us and said, are you sure about this? We said, yeah, why? So because we get lots of stolen bikes. Bikes that weren't stolen. It's a fraudulent claim.
Right.
I said, okay, well, we'll just keep an eye out. And then we had someone come in and he said, can you give me a quote for something like a Marin Palisades or something like that? I forget now. And I said, sure, what color was it? And he went, it was grey. They'd never made a grey one. Ever. I said, okay, where are the gear shifters, on top or underneath? And you could tell he had no idea. So I said, okay, you might want to have a think about that. And cut a long story short, we then managed to get contracts with Commercial Union, as it was, General Accident it was, to replace the bikes that had been genuinely stolen. And we went from selling 40, 50, 60 bikes a week, it was a big bike shop, to 40 to 50 a day.
Wow.
With a parcel force lorry coming up outside and picking up these bikes, sending them all across the country. And this was my first foray into proper business and turning a small bicycle shop, which was on the Manchester Road in Swindon. If you know it, you shouldn't know it. It's dodgy, or it was anyway. And turning that into a proper business. And that really gave me the impetus to think, what's next? How can we scale this? How can we improve on what we're doing already?
Really interesting. Look, business lesson there, just as a result of circumstances. You saw an opportunity. You were therefore an asset to the insurers.
absolutely.
happy to work with you. Shows the benefit of partnerships, understanding so the
Huge.
commercial partnerships that can work, and you kind of
Yeah.
10x a small business in a short period of time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we went on to sell that business.
right.
Now at that time, I wasn't a shareholder or a director,
Yeah.
so somebody else benefited entirely from that. But I benefited from the experience of
Mm,
that and took that on. How do you get systems and processes in place that aren't dependent on you
mm,
in such a way that you can scale or sell that business later?
very good. So when did the financial planning journey begin?
So I, after about 6 or 7 years, I'd married into that job, literally, and needed to extract myself because, being in the family all day, every day, and every evening, on the weekends was just too much.
Mm,
So I managed to get myself a job in software, um, knowing very little about it, and went from zero to top sales guy within about 12 to 18 months. Loved that. It was solution oriented, problem solving, if you like. And then I met someone, and she had just become a partner in a small financial advice business in Trowbridge, just outside of Bradford and Avon. Um, and it was mainly mortgages, annuities, the kind of 1980s, 1990s style of business, early 2000s. And I became a mortgage advisor in
mhm,
2007. Excellent timing, just before
mhm.
2000.
Right. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Perfect.
Trying to generate leads, uh,
Self-employed.
self-employed.
Yeah.
That was a struggle,
Mm,
I can tell you. And then our first little one came along, Maddie, who's now 18. And my other half then, we had an office with, she was on one desk dealing with the investments. I was on another desk dealing with the mortgages. There's Maddie in the middle. Right?
yeah.
It's like, put the phone on mute because she's crying and needs fed.
Yeah.
There's a real, back to basics
Yeah.
type of thing. And then we realized that we couldn't do that anymore. So I got the certificate
Yeah.
in financial planning? Uh, got that, took that on, and started to work on the business behind the scenes.
Mm, right.
Intriguing.
Interesting. And what happened? Did you over time you took over that business?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's my one. If you ever get me involved in anything, I'm gradually going to take
Yeah.
over.
Exactly.
You're probably the same, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't
Yeah.
just stand on the
Yeah,
sidelines
exactly.
of doing that. And I realized that when I sat in on the partnership meetings, that it wasn't making any money.
Mm,
And that was predominantly because it had self-employed advisors, and everyone just had their own job working in their own silo.
yeah.
And so over the course of time, I changed that from very transactional business that probably turned over, I don't know, 100 grand a year, something like that. It was very, very small, profitable in its own right,
Yeah.
pretty small, 100, 150. Removed everyone who didn't contribute in a substantial material way or didn't want to. And then eventually it was, um, by the time I sold it, it was just me running about 45, 50 million AUM,
Mm,
but living in Italy, living what my friends called la dolce vita.
yeah.
It was just great. So very much a lifestyle
Mm.
business. And that's a very short 15-year
Yeah, sure.
period, right?
But it's interesting in that just listening to you, Brian. It sounds to me that you took a lot of those early lessons, like the bike shop, you
Mm,
understood, and then moving forward, even possibly your days in the military as
mm,
well, just some of the lessons you'd have learned.
mm,
Your days selling software companies, and then you applied, and there's an
mm.
industry which obviously has been around for a long time, but you'd never been in it before,
No, no.
saw an opportunity, but you applied. I guess there are just some standard like, business disciplines
Yeah,
that create value, create revenue, create growth,
yeah,
all those things. So that would
yeah.
be fair to say you took all those lessons
Yeah, I
and
think
applied
so.
them. Yeah,
Yeah, I think so. And one of the most important lessons I took, particularly from the army, was that of delegation.
right.
Hugely, hugely important to the extent that my staff call me Captain Slopey Shoulders. So basically, anything lands on my desk, I apply the three rules, which is first of all, try and eliminate it so it never happens again. Now, I wouldn't suggest you do that with regulatory returns or anything else like that, but if you never have to do it again, then great, do something so it doesn't occur again. So eliminate, and then the second step is if you can't eliminate it, is then automate it. So, for instance, I'm sure you do the same. Diary invites. You shouldn't be sending emails backwards and forwards
Yeah,
about,
yeah.
can you come here? So, and a lot of people do that.
Mm,
And if you can or can't do that anyway, then delegate. So eliminate, automate,
mm,
delegate. So 10 years ago, probably 2013, 14, we'd started recording client meetings.
Yeah.
That's early. Now, there was no AI in those
Sure.
days. It was literally just upload it, someone listens to it, transcribes it. But by the time clients had come in, after they come into the meeting, they'd gone home. By the time they were home, usually they had the high-level bullet points of the meeting on their email, which was in those days very advanced.
Yeah.
Today, it's taken that's granted. That's a normal way of
Sure.
doing things,
Yeah.
you know. And I had 4 members of staff in the office. We were living in Italy. They would kind of wheel me in. I'd do my bit, and they'd wheel me out, and they'd do everything. And I wasn't sure if I got it right, but then I was in the office one day. We had 5 telephone lines. 4 of them were busy with the staff on calls to getting letters of authority sorted, and I'm sure everything's, that doesn't have to happen nowadays, but letters of authority sorted, or talking to clients, whatever it was. The fifth phone line rang, and I picked it up, and it was my only Scottish client. And he said to me, "I'm not going to do a Scottish
Yeah, be
accent
careful
because
what
you'll
you say
throw
here.
me
Yeah,
out."
yeah.
And he said, "Brian, what are you doing?" I said, "Answering the phone, Jack."
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, why?" I said, "Well, because the guys are on the phones. What do you want?" Because we always had that very direct kind
Sure.
of relationship. So we had the chat, and I said, "Right, I'll pass this on to the guys when we're done." He said, "Just put me through to Jenny anyway." I said, "You don't want to talk to me?" He said, "No, Brian. I want to talk to the organ grinder, not the monkey." I said,
Yeah.
"What do you mean?" He said, "They run the place.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
just kind of wheel you in." I said, "Highly qualified, highly rated."
Sure.
And he said, "Yeah, but they run it."
I think that's a really interesting dynamic, and it applies
Mm,
to, in my experience, most small businesses. Like the
mm,
original founder kind of knows everything, knows all the stuff,
mm,
and finds it very hard to let go.
mm.
Actually, and there's almost a sense of validation. I'm glad the client's calling me. I'll sort it all
Yeah,
out. But delegation is how you scale. It's how you create profits as
it's the
well.
only way.
It's the only way. You can't, if everything lands on your shoulders, the sloping shoulders, just bounce them off,
Yeah,
pass them
completely.
on to someone else. And I think the other thing about that I think about is that done on a daily basis, day after day, year after year, that compounds. That's
Hmm.
significant in terms of creating additional capacity,
Mm.
empowering other people, and just being a more efficient business.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's a really important thing to do that I think a lot of small business owners struggle with. Actually, just proper delegation.
Yeah, and sometimes, in starting Pathfinders, we've had to start from scratch.
Mm,
Delegation is a tough gig, particularly when you've come from a fully delegated position. You kind of have to know the business to be able to delegate
yeah,
well to the right people. Otherwise, it's like playing the right notes in the wrong order.
yeah,
But without that, the business can't hope to scale
sure.
in any way, shape, or form. And also, you're only as good as yourself.
Yeah,
Whereas I thought, right, if I can delegate it to someone who can do it 80% as
sure.
well as I can,
Yeah,
then great. But actually, what I found was they were much better than me
yeah,
at this sort of thing.
sure.
If we gave them the right training,
Yeah.
opportunity, and the right motivation and the right feeling within the business, then people will go through to the ends of the earth to
Sure.
do the right thing
Yeah,
for the client and for you as a business owner.
sure. Yeah,
That's what.
really, really important.
Mm,
So you eventually sold that business.
yeah.
Tell me about the journey. What first kind of triggered the thought of selling, or did you plan to sell from the minute you kind of took over and grew it?
No, I didn't have any of those thoughts at all.
Right.
I wish I'd had the book Everyone Exit before I'd exited.
Yeah.
That would have been super helpful. But everyone who had exited back in 2020 had retired pretty much.
Yeah.
They were nowhere to be found. And I think one of the challenges within the profession, although everyone is very open and sharing, is that you still tend to operate in your own echo chamber, you know, and that can be a real challenge. People don't like to overshare
Mm,
what's going on within their business. Notwithstanding that, I've popped the bonnet on, I don't know, 300 businesses or so now.
yeah.
And there are many that I look at and think, you don't tell people enough of what the good stuff you do.
Mm,
And I just look at them and think, I wish I'd done that.
mm,
That's great. Equally, there's some at the other end, a few that are a bag of spanners. We can kind of help those sometimes. But in terms of the where I was at, I wasn't thinking of selling it.
mm.
But after we moved to Italy, we were lived by Lake Garda for a few years. Um, we had that move had been preceded by, I think I was doing some training for Simply Biz or someone like that. Whoever's up in Hull or Huddersfield, something like that.
Simply Biz, yeah,
Simply
Huddersfield,
Biz.
yeah.
So I've been training their advisors on the first meetings and the Searchlight. And because my master's is in behavioral science, so
Right.
I
Okay.
joined the two things together. And I've managed to get on the wrong train, and it was raining, and there were drunks on the train. And you know what they say: the longer you stay on the wrong train, the more expensive and longer it takes to get back. And I called my other half, and I said at that time, right, I've had enough, we're going. And she said, great, where? I said, Italy. She went, great. And we used to summer in Italy.
Sure.
Sounds very precocious, pretentious, that does, but we used to summer in Italy. And she said, I said, Italy. She said, oh, great, when? I said, as soon as possible. And this is October, I think it was, 2017. And she said, okay, how long for? I said, indefinitely. We'll take it a year at a time. And she was
Yeah.
like, silence on the end of the phone. Like, what are you talking about? And in July, we picked the kids up from school and drove to Italy.
Wow.
And took the kids with us.
Okay.
Great, thankfully. And so at that point, I had no concept of selling the business. But I think it was just a combination of being worn down by regulatory stuff. I think I'm not alone in
Sure.
that.
Sure.
There's many advisors, owners who just, whereas you can see the benefits of things like, say, consumer duty and RDR back in 2012 and these sorts of things, it never reduces.
Sure. Oh, yeah. It always gets added to.
Added
They don't take anything away when they
No.
add something new.
No,
Yeah.
they don't.
Yeah.
I used to term it of layer upon layer of simplification.
Yeah. Exactly.
Just adding to it. And in the end, I just thought, actually, I've been doing this for 15 years. I'm going to go and do something else. Google, how do you sell an IFA business?
That's literally how you start. You just come to this conclusion,
Yeah.
fed up with everything that's going on.
Fed up.
You're making some lifestyle changes anyway, relocated to Italy, all that, and then everything comes together. You say, right, I'm going to get out. I'm going to sell. You literally start with how to. Google our friend
it.
Mr. Google. Yeah, type it in.
Yeah,
That's how
and
you
then
did it.
just entered this wild west. It felt like of brokers.
Yeah.
Something I've been completely unaware of
Sure.
before, really. And you don't know what you don't know. And there were lots of things that I didn't know, and there's no duty of disclosure or anything else like that. And what I found was that in some ways I created a bit of a rod for my own back. And what I mean by that is, although I had developed a business that I was easily replaceable in, there was one aspect of our business that made it challenging in 2020, which was that we were a fixed fee firm.
Okay.
So that not only were we fixed fee initial, fixed fee ongoing, we charged that fixed fee annually in advance.
Okay, and just for anyone who's watching or listening to this who doesn't work in financial services, just explain what exactly that means and how it differs from the rest of the market.
Sure, yeah, good question. So 90%, 95% of financial advice firms charge a percentage of assets under management to manage your assets, your investments, your portfolio going forward. And that's the way it's been for decades. And the vast majority are like that. And we felt in some ways, for us anyway, that wasn't a great fit from a commercial point of view, because I find it difficult to predict accurately what the revenue would be. So I could predict the costs of the business. I couldn't predict the revenue. It might be up because markets have gone up. It might be down because suddenly, as in this case, people are worried about their tax-free cash, and they're suddenly taking out all their tax-free cash. And suddenly, if you are on an ad valorem, a percentage-based, your fees drop by 25% if they're not reinvesting it with you. And so I thought, well, we'll simplify that. Let's do fixed fees. And as it happened, across the board, the typical fee was equivalent to 0.74%.
Right.
So it just happened to be that. But it was a bit of a struggle initially to work out how to conceptualize that for clients, because it's a very different thing to say to someone, your fee is £10,000 a year to your fee is 0.6%.
Sure.
Mentally, you have to kind of get over that. And initially, I failed miserably trying to persuade clients to do this. You understand this.
Yeah, I do.
You've got a better understanding than most with this. And so eventually I managed to work out how to do it. And it meant that we then had predictable income throughout. And then we would just bill clients once in different tranches per 90 days. So, and it also meant that clients would only join us, new clients would only join us per 90 days.
Okay.
So we had a funnel.
So very structured, very
Very structured.
systemized. Again, taking some of your previous business experiences and
Yeah,
applying their business strategy,
yeah,
as opposed to just doing what everyone else does.
yeah, yeah,
Taking a
yeah.
different approach, which I guess worked well for you
It worked
during
well.
those years, and you were growing.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. Gave us a lot of, gave me a lot of comfort
Mm.
there. But when we came to sell the business, buyers would look at it and kind of go, "Well, how on earth do we do this?"
Yeah.
It created a real challenge. But one of the other challenges that we had was that I didn't realize until afterwards that when you speak to a broker,
Mm.
um, then invariably they are what we call buy side.
Yeah.
And this is right across the board, not just in financial services, it's right across every profession, every industry. So you get buy side and sell side. So under the law of agency, buy side brokers are required to work in the best interest of the buyer. Sell side are required to work in the best interest of the seller. 9 out of 10 of the brokers in the financial advice sector are buy side. And my question is to advisors is, look, if you're selling your house and you only get to do it once, you've never done it before either, are you going to engage with a estate agent who is there to represent and negotiate the best interests of the person buying your house? Or do you think that's a bit of a conflict? And every financial advisor I speak to says, well, no, I'd never do that.
Yeah.
But that's the
And
way
yet
that
they
they
do it when
operate.
it comes to selling. It's probably the single biggest asset they've
Yeah,
ever
it's
owned.
crazy.
Yeah.
And I still struggle with it a little bit because as advisors, we encourage clients to lean on us
Mm.
to support them in their retirement planning, in their business sale, or whatever it is, to say, look, you do you, and we'll do the stuff that we're really good at.
Yeah.
But when an advisor comes to sell their own business, not all of them do that. They do a DIY,
Mm.
or maybe through the buyer's brokers. And that's what I did. You don't know what you don't know. And
So what did you actually do? So you Google how to sell a
Googled,
business,
yeah, and I got
and
a,
then you get some brokers come up. You reach
yeah,
out to them, say, I'm thinking of
yeah.
selling.
And then I go on email spam lists for,
Yeah,
we've
exactly.
all had them, right?
For
It's a
okay.
buyer in your area who will pay you 20 times recurring
Yeah, yeah,
type of,
all that sort of stuff.
yeah,
And yes, I guess that is part of that process as well. There's all sorts of theoretical promises, and again, I think this is worth spending a minute on. What I've kind of learned speaking to lots of people in the last number of years,
mm.
it's a kind of almost a bait and switch. Is that what
Yeah,
you
yeah,
call it? Or
yeah, very much. Yeah,
um, quoting, yes, we could sell your business in terms of these brokers. We can sell you this bit. Again, the similarities are like estate
yeah,
agents. Yeah, we can get a valuation of X. And you go,
yeah,
oh, that's great
yeah,
to get you as a client. And
yeah,
then it's back to well, no, the market's changed or something. Did
exactly.
you experience a bit of that? A bit of
Very
sort of
much.
very
Yeah,
high headline suggestions of your valuation.
very much. And the reason for that is twofold. The first that I found out later was the broker, and why we set up Pathfinders to
Mm.
be the antithesis of this, was that brokers get paid different commissions by different buyers,
Right.
which is why we see some of these challenges and issues, I think, within the profession where we have a misalignment between the buyer and the seller in terms of client experience and advisor experience. Maybe why you see advisors leaving in droves
Yeah.
because of that misalignment in cultural fit. And so brokers will introduce, in my experience, then and now, will introduce buyers to a seller sequentially. So they'll say, right, go and have a Bob, go and have a chat with XYZ's buyer. Let me know how you get on. That buyer pays them 6% commission. Doesn't work out for whatever reason. Right, go and have a chat with this buyer. That buyer pays them 5% commission. And they keep on going like
Or
that.
interesting, they're incentivized to
Incentivized hugely.
engage you with the highest paying
Correct.
commission.
Correct. And the second compounding challenge with that is that the broker gets paid 100% on completion of the enterprise value, irrelevant to what happens later. And certainly I've always felt that we can do better than that. And so we set up Pathfinders so that we get paid very similarly to the selling principle.
Right.
And we match that and we stay on up. We decide that we will stay on after completion for a year after completion
Okay.
to help with the transition because we can bring a lot of leverage to the conversation. So the issues that still are today is that the buyers brokers, which is 9 out of 10, will get paid varying levels of commission. I don't think that's right.
Yep.
And they get paid 100% on completion, and that's I think all of the other sell side brokers as well also get 100% on completion. Again, I don't think that's right. And we're not going to earn as much because we do things that way. But again, it's about putting your head on the pillow and knowing that you're doing the right thing the same way we used to run the financial planning business.
A quick pause. You might not be aware that this podcast is a passion project. It's born from my commitment to supporting entrepreneurs through the business stages of scaling up, selling, and then life on the other side. It's the same work we do at Capital Partners, our boutique wealth planning firm, which is dedicated to helping entrepreneurs to gain clarity around their money, their aspirations, and ultimately achieving financial peace of mind. With over 20 years' experience of working with business owners, our team brings deep insight, strategic thinking, and clarity to what can often be complex decisions. So, what you're really looking for is a trusted advisor, someone who understands people like you and can offer thoughtful guidance at the intersection of business, family, money, and life. In other words, someone to act as your strategic thinking partner and your financial coach. So if that resonates, feel free to explore more. There's a link in the show notes to our website with tools and resources to support you on your journey. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
Sure. Yeah. Really interesting. And again, taking your own experiences, and we'll come on to what you're doing now in a moment or two, but taking on your own experiences, what you've learned, the good and the bad, and then try to create something which is better than what is historically and still currently does exist.
Yeah.
Talk me through just the actual sale process, because I think this is something that's kind of unexplored. Everyone thinks about, well, I'll sell my business one day and someone will write me a check and, it'll take a few weeks and we'll all be done and dusted.
Yeah.
I reckon it's a lot more complex and a lot more time
Hugely.
consuming than that. So what was your own experience? So you reach out, you speak to a few brokers, and then I guess you engage with somebody who says, I can sell your business for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me what went on after that.
So they're very lightweight conversations. Just tell me what your ongoing advisor revenue is, your
Yeah.
ongoing advisor charge, how much you charge, how many clients you have, just these very high level metrics. And within a week, you're meeting buyers really, really quick because it's usually just introduction only. So, Brian, have a chat with Bob.
All right.
Let me know how it goes. And that's indicative of a super lightweight process usually. And so I would then meet these buyers. I'd go and see them. I remember I went to see one buyer who is actually one of our buyers that we use at the minute. And I sat down in front of them. Within 5 minutes, we worked out this was never going to work.
Oh, really?
5 minutes it took. Should have never had that conversation in the first place.
Yeah.
But again, they were paid introductory
You
commissions.
see, at least the headlines. Why would it not work? This particular.
They were restricted.
Okay, so you were never going to sell to someone who would only offer restricted advice.
Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all.
No,
far from it.
But for you,
for me, because we'd made a big song and dance about being independent, it would have been a difficult conversation for us to say, I've changed my mind and I happen to be selling at the same time.
Sure.
I just don't think that's, for me, that wasn't legitimate.
That comes back to alignment, making sure what are your kind of red flags? What are the things that I guess there are things you'll negotiate on and some you just won't. Correct. And that was one. And they should have known that from day one, any brokers. So you've never been sent there in the first place.
Correct. Yeah.
But eventually, through this process, you're going to meet someone else and someone else.
Yeah.
And eventually, you find somebody you think, this could work.
This could work.
Right.
So we started off having those initial conversations, very sort of a fractured approach, not a systemized approach to it. Go and meet someone in a pub, have a telephone call, maybe have a Teams meeting, and get to know each other a little bit. And then we met the guys from Perspective, who are a great outfit.
Okay.
Really good, very strong, very commercial, structured process, big mergers and acquisitions team. They'll make more acquisitions in a month than most people do in their whole lifetime. And great for certain types of firm. And they would be the first to say they're not great for other types of firm. And they are one of 173 on our database. So there's lots. But they took on my business. I'm not sure if they regret that or not, but they retained a lot of clients, most of the clients as well, which was a good thing. But just stepping back a little bit, you had the initial conversations, and then you get an offer through. We got an offer through, and the weird thing is when you get an offer through, it feels like the deal is done.
Right.
And it's far from it. It's far from it. If you think of it in terms of and I don't know if you can remember this far back, but when you're dating, all right. So offers are like dating. Will you go out with me?
Right. Yeah.
Heads of terms is like engagement,
Okay.
and completion is like getting married, except there's no divorce later on.
Yeah.
Right? It's like the
And
Mormons.
there's a long time,
Yeah,
money, effort, all sorts of things
that's right.
between going
Yeah,
out for a drink and getting married,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
In my
exactly. A
experience.
lot of a lot of
Right,
time,
right.
but some people move real fast.
You're right.
And
Yeah.
there's no revolving door in this. You don't get the chance. I'm twice divorced. You don't get that
Okay.
opportunity,
Yeah.
right? You have to be really, really certain that this is the right one for you. And so as you go through the process, it all seems quite nice and easy. And well, that sounds fine. Here's an offer for you based on what you've told us. You think, well, that makes sense. And people rely on, and I relied on at that time, the relationship
Yeah.
that you've built with the person on the other side of the desk. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is that these are professional buyers. They're very professional buyers outside of financial advice. These are usually professional buyers, and they know what they're doing. They've done this many times. Virtually, I would say 99% of financial advisors, owners in this space,
Yeah.
have never done it before and will never do it again.
Yeah.
You are easy pickings.
Yeah.
Easy pickings. And I don't mean they're going to come in and just pillage the whole thing, but I've been in enough meetings to know exactly how they work, or very, very closely. And in fact, one buyer I said before a meeting, just to kind of not destabilize him a little bit, but just to let him know that I knew,
Yeah.
was to say, just if I hear you say these things, I'm just gonna make a note of it. He says, what things? I said, what you're gonna say to them is that we don't pay the most. And he just looked at me bright red and went, do I say that every single meeting? And I know what you're doing, you're positioning it, and I get that.
Yeah.
And I completely understand it. And you don't, you pay the least,
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned, but it's a very clever piece of positioning.
Mm.
So, I think one of the challenges that I had was that I went direct to the buyers. You lose all leverage, all negotiating position, is because they know you're coming to them. They know you've got no representation.
That's really interesting. So you find a broker. The broker just gives you an email address. I mean,
Yeah,
contact him,
yeah,
go for a coffee, have a conversation,
yeah,
and that's it. It's just you.
yeah,
Like, frankly, but it's somewhat lamb to the slaughter coming out. These
yeah.
are experienced
Very
buyers of
experienced.
companies. You're one of dozens they're doing and conversations they're having.
Yeah,
As you say, this is the
yeah,
first and only time you'd have gone through it. So
yeah.
even knowing questions to ask, things to be aware of,
Mm.
it's going to be very, very difficult. And then you go into negotiations without representation.
But the thing is, on this island, is that most sellers don't realize they're negotiating.
Yeah,
They don't know they're in negotiations. They just think they're having a chat.
you're right.
And these are very, very good negotiators, very good buyers usually for certainly your PE-backed firms.
Yeah,
They have targets.
sure.
Okay. And to go for a coffee and, that sort of thing. What people will say, I really want to meet and chat so I can sum them up. Scientifically, you have a better chance of being able to sum someone up by flicking a coin than you are eye to eye ball contact. We are just very bad at it as humans.
Right.
So people rely on that. I think these are good guys. I could work with them. Now that is part and parcel of the deal, but it comes much later. It doesn't come at the beginning, which is the way what I experienced with that. So what you find then is you get an offer through. Feels like gee, but that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's good. And then you sign that off without. They produce heads of terms, which are essentially an expanded version of the offer, and these will detail what the main terms of the deal will be. It's really important to make sure that anything you are going to rely on is in there. Now, it doesn't mean to say if something's in there you can't put it into the agreement later, but you do really need to have all the lines.
Yeah, I think this is important as well. Sometimes people think, well, heads of terms is not legally binding, therefore it's not that important.
Mm.
But I think you've said in the
It's very
past
important.
it's really important
Yeah, it's
because
really important.
we'll always refer back to this in future conversations.
Correct.
So if there's anything you are that it's essential you have included or
Yeah.
excluded, get it in that initial
Correct.
discussion document, heads of terms.
So the heads of terms are not binding apart from, this is important, confidentiality, you'd expect that, but more importantly, exclusivity.
Yeah.
So what that means is as soon as we sign off our heads of terms, we're now off the market. And if you've only gone to one or two or three buyers, there's 170 bars out there. You've just completely closed the doors to everybody. It's like sort of bumping into someone at a bus stop and saying, "Will you go out with me?" And they say,
You'll
"Yes,
do.
you'll do."
Well, there's 170 waiting down the road.
That's
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah.
And sounds a bit like my personal life, actually, but
That's another podcast,
that's
right? Yeah,
another
yeah.
podcast, definitely. And so that's for most firms when it starts getting challenging. You
Mm,
enter into due diligence, and the buyer is looking for risk that they don't want to take. And they will look at it from a regulatory, from a legal and financial point of view. And they will, if particularly if it's a share sale, they are going to go through it in fine detail, and it is going to be really, really painful.
yeah,
But most importantly, the buyer is in charge of that time period. They are calling the shots. They're perfectly at liberty to come back to you and say, Alan, we didn't know about this. You didn't tell us about that. So we're going to knock that price down a little bit
yeah.
just to reflect it, or we're going to extend the deferred consideration period. And by the time you've done 3 or 4 months of that, you're just, okay, fine, whatever. You're just exhausted.
I've heard of this as well.
Yeah.
Deal fatigue.
It's a real
Months and
thing.
months and months into it, and you just say,
It's a real
I've
thing.
lost the will to fight for this.
Yeah.
Just whatever you say,
Just do it.
which is
Yeah.
dangerous, really.
It's really
and will
dangerous.
impact your valuation and your sale price, which again is
Yeah.
literally lifestyle consequences for the rest of your life if this is the sort
Completely.
of single biggest financial transaction.
And if you don't have alternatives, then you're between a rock and a hard place. And there's an acronym called BATNA, BATNA, Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement,
Right.
which is what's your other option. And so if you've gone direct and you've only seen one or two buyers, and you're then in exclusivity, and you then say to the other buyers, "Great, thanks guys, but I'm going with this firm," and you think, actually, I really don't know what they're saying. It's very difficult to extract yourself out of that and then go and say to one of the previous buyers, "Actually, you know what?
Yeah.
I've decided it's not going to work," and they're going to go, "Why?"
Mm.
It creates a really difficult mechanism for you to be able to do that.
You're certainly coming into that from a weaker position of
Much weaker.
negotiation.
Much
You,
weaker
you
position.
kind of rejected initially.
Yeah.
There's a lot of similarities to relationships as well. Going to come back.
Sloppy seconds, I think we call it.
Okay. That's definitely another podcast.
There's a history here.
Tell me about so how long did the process last from your first kind of outbound communication to closing on the deal?
I think it was about 7 or 8 months
Okay.
altogether during COVID
Yeah.
as
Okay.
well.
Not
So
ideal. So this is all
not ideal.
Teams meetings, Zoom calls,
Teams.
back and forth
Yeah.
throughout the
And
whole
then when I
process.
did meet them, there was 2 or 3 meters distance between each of us.
Yeah,
Which
exactly.
made it
Yeah,
a bit
yeah.
awkward.
That's not going to help because this is I get it. It is about data and numbers and spreadsheets, but it is a human interaction as well. You've got to feel comfortable, and our profession is a very human one, and I guess you're thinking about your clients,
Mm.
your staff, and what life is going to be like sort of post transaction. So
Yeah.
getting to know people as other humans, I guess, is important as well. So it's hard to do
Yeah.
during those
Yeah.
COVID years.
It's really important to have that meeting later on, and the reason for that is that when you've accepted an offer and probably you're in heads of terms and you're meeting people, most people will look for signs to verify their decision.
Yeah.
To validate, their decision. I was speaking to Jason Butler the other day, and he came up with a really good line, which is he looks for reasons not to invest or not to go forwards.
Yeah.
Show me why I shouldn't go forwards with this. But when a seller goes to meet a buyer, he or she is not usually looking at that. They've really kind of made a decision. This looks like a good firm, got a nice website, I kind of know the people. They're looking for a reason to validate their decision to go forwards. Because you are then in a position where you are using your perception, not a perspective. Two very, very different aspects. Perception is your gut feel. Perspective is something based later on facts and something else and other stuff as well. And which is one of the reasons that we're so bad at doing this ourselves.
Sure.
Which is one of the reasons that you can do such a good job as financial planners for clients.
Yes.
Because you have perspective, whereas they have perception, if that makes sense.
I think that's really important. I often talk about there's people who want to DIY their personal finances. That's fine, and then in terms of basic investment strategies and what have you, it's not rocket science necessarily to do that. But you don't have that. You can't make those judgments because you're emotionally attached to the outcomes.
Yeah,
and I think a great financial planner and a great kind of M&A advisor or
mm,
broker has got that. They want good outcomes for their clients, but they're not
yeah,
emotionally. They can look at things just through just hard facts and figure
yeah,
and sort of guide whether something's necessarily good or
mm,
bad,
mm,
not necessarily attached emotionally to
yeah,
the outcome. So I think I'm a big believer in life in general of taking professional advice, paying a
yeah,
good fee to
yeah,
have that, because it's not so much, it's sometimes not so much the things they tell you to do, but the things they tell you not to do or things to
correct.
avoid. And I think on
So important.
these kind of one-way transactions, once you've done it, you can't unravel it.
No,
So it's super important.
yeah,
So it took you about 7 months.
yeah,
How
yeah.
did it feel on completion?
Complete anticlimax.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people say this.
yeah,
It's just, huh, big number in your bank account.
yeah,
That's nice, but um, it depends on the type of exit you're going to do.
yeah,
Mine was a fairly rapid handover because I delegated loads of stuff.
yeah,
They didn't really need me for much,
yeah.
to be honest with you. Now, some owners will like to stay on for a long time.
Sure.
Some will have a fairly, short time period, maybe a year or two. Others want a kind of a cliff edge exit. And if there's a cliff edge exit, and if there's anything I can suggest, is do not do a cliff edge exit unless you're getting paid all your money on day one
Right.
or virtual on day one,
Mm.
because the deferred consideration or earn out, depending on what type it is, um, will be dependent on you
Yeah.
to an extent.
Yeah.
And so that maybe it's profit related, maybe it's ongoing advisor or some sort of revenue related, profit related KPIs are going to be in place
Mm.
for you to make sure the bar hits the right earn out, make sure it works for them.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
but for me it was a bit of an anticlimax, and suddenly I've got no diary, no email. I mean, I virtually have email inbox zero every day anyway, but this was genuinely inbox zero. Someone had taken my inbox off me, and
And your calendar's free.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
a really strange feeling, and I really was.
But you're wealthier in liquid terms than you were the day before.
Yeah, I mean that kind of is better when people like there was a research piece done which said that whether something amazingly good happens to someone, say they win the lottery, or something terribly bad happens to someone, a terrible car accident, people revert to norm.
Yeah.
And I found that deeply interesting. When I reflected on my time, I then reflected. I lasted about a week before I started thinking, right, what can I do here? And that was a really interesting piece to hit me. Now, I hadn't taken the advice that I give out now because I didn't know
Yeah.
this
Sure.
was the advice, as we were saying before, which is never get yourself into anything you haven't first worked out how to get out of. Now, that includes planes, business,
Yeah.
marriage,
Yeah.
relationships, you know, all those sorts of things. Where's your exit? What's your BATNA? How are you going to get out of this? What's your next step? And I've had owners come to me before and we said, what are you going to do after?
Mm.
And if they haven't really thought it through, we need to pause whilst you work that stuff out.
Yeah.
And I can't pause indefinitely, but it is a piece of work to say, this is something you need to go and do. And so, for instance, one of my businesses I sold about a year ago, one of the owners of that is coming to work for me
Okay.
in January with just amazing experience that she's got to run the ops side. It's probably one of the best businesses I've seen in terms of operations. And she didn't know anything about that before
Mm.
we sold her business. So I don't think it needs to be fixed in place. But if you count the number of hours you spend each day working, talking
Yeah.
to clients, emails, that's gone. What are you genuinely
Yeah.
going to do that's going to fulfill you?
Yeah. I'd like to explore that in a moment or two in a bit more detail because it is a recurring theme.
Yeah.
But so you didn't have this grand plan
No,
after? Did you? I'm always intrigued. Did you buy yourself anything nice? Any toys? You
I
got?
did.
Yeah.
I
What
did.
did you do?
Well, I've never been into cars really, but I thought I'll go and buy myself a new car.
Okay.
And I looked on Auto Trader and all the magazines and the rest of it. And I went and bought, there's a financial planner coming at me, a second-hand Jaguar XF for 12 grand.
Okay.
That
Hey,
was it. Diesel.
last of the big spenders.
That's the big
Yeah. Yeah.
spenders. But I think what that was, bizarrely, was that my dad always loved Jags.
Right.
And so one of the first things I did was take it around there, and we took him out on a ride for it, and he really loved it. Even though it was like a 3 or 4 year old Jag, it was still a Jaguar,
Yeah.
and he's been a big influence in my life, and he worked his way up from his parents. Sorry, his parents both died by the time he was 16, in Northern Ireland, and he worked his way up from sweeping the shop floor in typesetters on a printing company to, as he moved through different jobs, he went and worked in what was known as the Bath Press, or sorry, Pitman Press became the Bath Press in Bath, and took it international, floated on the stock exchange, and I have a picture of him with Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah.
They printed her book. They printed Andrew Morton's Diana years, I think it was, and a lot of the phrases that I use today were actually his phrases.
Yeah.
He's going to probably ask me for some pound coins
Yeah.
to support this, and that was really a defining influence. So I think, do you like go and buy something? That was it.
But that's just a nice moment, I think,
Yeah.
for you to kind of go back, pay respect to him,
Yeah.
share your success. He'd have been proud of you to have achieved that,
Yeah.
achieved that success, and then share a
Yeah.
moment with him with the Jag,
Yeah.
which
Yeah. Yeah.
which he'd have
And it
enjoyed.
was with the book as well, actually, because he's always, he was a book printer.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And is very, very well read. And I was most anxious about him reading the book, not about you or my peer groups
Yeah.
reading, because I know you'd be supportive of it,
Yeah.
but him reading it, having no understanding of the profession, thinking, oh, what if I've got a spelling mistake in there?
Yeah.
He's gonna shoot
He
me
wouldn't
down.
let you get away with it. Yeah.
No, and so I sent it him, and I called him up, and he called me up, and he said, "Well, Brian, I've read your book." Gosh, I'm in my 50s. I shouldn't be feeling like this. And he said, "It's really good. It's really good." And I was like,
It's a nice moment.
great. So Jag and book,
Yeah.
I've ticked a
Job
couple
done.
of boxes.
And it shows it's not always just, making a huge purchase and a flashy new car necessarily. It's just, I think sometimes it's joining the dots of your history, your kind of your experience, what's brought you to where you are today. So that's a lovely moment.
Yeah.
And at this stage, I mean, I often ask people when, once they've been through scale up, sale, exit, all the kind of drama that goes with them selling your business, they come out the other side. I'll say, what's your experience been? But in your case, you've written a book about it,
Yeah,
so
literally.
it makes it a bit easier.
Mm.
I have read the book, Brian.
Thank
Bought
you.
it on Amazon. Give a 5-star review, by the
Oh,
way.
did you? Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
so that all helps. The book is called.
Everyone exits. You're either you're either bought out, pushed out, or wheeled out.
Right. And that's the key point, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that's very relevant for any
Anyone.
SME owner. And I've spoken to, hundreds over the years,
Yeah.
and some will say, no plans to sell. I'm not selling. But,
Mm.
but the point is, you are leaving your business. Even if you're not selling, you are leaving, even if you're carried out effectively. And that's, as they say, a suboptimal
Suboptimal.
of the options which are available. Obviously, the optimal one is to sell for hopefully a life-changing sum of money, such that you've got financial security and independence for the rest of your life in an ideal world. What inspired you to write the book?
I really felt that there wasn't enough experience or collateral out there where owners could take time and read something that wasn't a massive tome, but equally something that wasn't trying to sell them something.
Yeah.
And wrote it from my own personal experience of having exited, and worked with lots and lots of owners as well in their experiences, to say, look, it's not the only structure, it's not the only process, but we find this is one that works really, really well, and that gives people the optimal chance of success, whatever success looks like for them. And I've got a lot of joy from writing that, and it validated a lot of the anxiousness perhaps I had around various aspects of that, where you're kind of hard on yourself in retrospect, and you think, how did I miss that? Or, for instance, and I think I mentioned it in the book, one letter in a contract, one word in a contract can have a significant impact. And we're talking about, you were saying about, you should always ideally look to engage professional services and pay good money for it too. And I will say to people, look, when you come to sell your business, particularly regulated business, you're going to need legal representation. And I require you to use a solicitor who is experienced in the sale of regulated financial planning businesses. Because if you've got your local solicitor to do this, they're going to have to learn on your
Yeah.
exit.
Yeah.
Okay, and it will either cost you now or it will cost you later.
Yeah.
And in my instance, there was the difference between best endeavors and reasonable
Yeah,
endeavors.
you do refer to
I
that, and
do
it's
it.
a very small,
Yeah, yeah.
subtle change, but can make a huge impact.
At least I would have understood, even if it couldn't be changed, at least I would have understood it.
Yeah.
And what I said to a client the other day, look, the legal fees are probably going to be about 40, 50 grand because it's a big deal, this one. He said, that's quite a lot of money. I said, look, if that contract stays in the drawer and gathers dust, you want to have spent the least amount of money on it.
Yeah.
If that contract ever has to be pulled out and referred to, you're going to hope you've spent the most amount of money on it. So let's go for that.
Yeah.
And then we've got some certainty behind it.
Interesting. There's a whole range of types of exit. I mean, we the assumption is that most people sell to another acquirer, whether they're PE backed or otherwise. But there's a range of other
Yeah.
options. Some of which I see people talk about. A number of people in our community have done so already. Just give us a sort of brief run through two or three other options there are for selling.
Sure. Well, the first one is assume you can do nothing.
Yeah.
It's the eternal business.
Yeah.
Not Chris Budd's eternal business, but the eternal business is never going to, there's advisors still in their 70s
Yep.
or so enjoying doing their work. And I think that's fantastic in many respects. But those are businesses without a plan, an exit.
Yep.
And that worries me greatly when you see that. So broadly speaking, though, there are two types of exit, internal or external. Now, I think maybe we're quite unusual in that as far as advisory firms go, compared to the brokers, we are very, very big on internal exits. And it's the first thing we will look at. So owner comes to us and comes to me and says, Brian, I'm thinking of exiting. And the first questions is, have you considered, and is it possible to do an MBO or an EOT? And the reason for that is the most successful transactions are those with the least amount of friction.
Yeah.
And if you think of it as moving, let's say, staff and clients between boats, and the bigger the difference between the boats in terms of height, the more people are going to fall in between the middle, and it's going to end up messy. So we want them at the same kind of height idea. They don't have to be the same, they don't have to be painted the same or anything like that. But we need to have a similarity. So if you've got an MBO there or EOT possibility, then great. So that's the first type. There's a lot of risks with that, a huge amount of risks. I've seen it where some principals think, I can't sell it externally, so I'll sell it internally.
Yep.
And or the values are overinflated. I must confess, and I do apologize, sort of, to at least two firms I know of where I've put the kibosh on their internal exit because they're clearly using it as an inflated value exit,
Right.
or a toxic product or advice
Right.
exit. Too many DB schemes, and such like. So, but MBOs are good because we've got that familiarity with systems and processes and people. Clients like it because it looks all the same to them.
Sure.
And from a risk point of view, well, it's all pretty much everything is.
Yeah, it's pretty low risk. The same
Pretty low
team is going to continue.
Yeah. On the other side, it's also quite high risk.
Yeah.
As well, because usually no one knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Which is the worst case scenario. And it all sounds great, but then when you start popping the bonnet on the stuff you need to do and the risk you need to take and the finance you need to raise, it then starts getting a bit choppy.
Yeah.
And that's one of the real difficulties with MBO, is that usually it's almost entirely or majority seller financed, and usually over a very, very long time period as well. So that seller needs to be quite flush.
Quite flush and very patient.
Very patient.
Yeah.
Now, there's ways around this you can do, but phased payments or phased acquisition, but there comes a tipping point of when you're no longer in charge, but you're still there. Whereas on an external exit, it's normally quite short.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So MBOs, EOTs, as I said, we're a big fan of. One of the challenges I think can be is where you move from, say, you're running the business as the principal. The buck stops with you.
Yeah.
No one's coming to save you. It's just you. and you might refer to your management team, you might get their input, but the buck stops with you. To the phrase I use is management by committee. As a financial planner, I once had charities as as people I worked with. I stopped that pretty quick. So I just couldn't deal with the decision-making process. For me, it just didn't suit at all.
Yeah.
I think being ex-military, you just want to know, do I have 80% of what I need to know?
Yeah.
Do I know all the good, important stuff? Execute, you know? And so can you move as an owner while still being involved to management by committee, and you're still the leader, but you ain't making decisions? I think that's a really difficult.
You're not making decisions, and those decisions, your future financial success is dependent upon making the right decisions.
Completely.
So it's challenging. I guess it definitely works in some circumstances
Yeah.
if you've got the right people
Yeah.
together, and then everyone understands each other's role.
Yeah.
But often it's challenged for
Very,
sure.
very challenging.
So therefore, the other alternative is a traditional
Yeah.
exit sale to an external third party.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? I mean, in pretty much every industry, private equity. I mean, private equity numbers are now absolutely crazy. You know,
Yeah.
trillions of pounds or dollars around the world being sort of channeled into private businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, broadly speaking, I was with some M&A people last week talking about, you understand that the demographics, the baby boomer generation,
Yeah.
which are 50s and 60s right now, who own SMEs right now,
Yeah.
they are inevitably going to be selling. So there's a huge amount of deals, transactions, which will be done over the next decade. And so just looking at the demographics and the shifting of those businesses, tell me about your thoughts or your views on external acquisitions. Talked about private equity. They're not all private equity backed.
No.
Some are different. But what are your thoughts on external buyers? What to look out for? Who the better sort of structures are?
Well, there's a lot of myths out there in which are traded around about private equity, and there's even groups like anti-private equity groups set up,
Really?
which I find quite interesting. And of course, you will have those private equity groups that just go in looking for a quick buck, and equally you get those who are definitely not. The same as financial planners, you get those who are really excellent and those who are not. But to tar them all with the same brush, I think is misconceived. I was listening to your podcast the other week, and is it Matt from Rockpool?
Yes.
So not strictly. I mean, it is private equity, but it's a different type of private
Sure.
equity. And I know these guys, and they're very, very professional at what they do. But a couple of things to take away from that there's two key parts of that. Number one, the return that they normally expect. I think that Matt was saying 3 to 5 times return on their investment, and that 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10 fail as well. I don't think any of those were financial planners from memory. I think they were completely different things. But the important metric on that is they are looking for a return.
Yeah.
So when you go and when a seller goes to meet a private equity backed buyer, they are looking to see you seeing your profit and your free cash flow and what multiple they're going to get from that in 3 to 5 years' time. There's no two ways about it.
Because they themselves are going to package that up
and sell it on to the next
sell it on.
PE.
Yeah.
That's business, and it's foolish to go into it thinking it's going to be anything. Is it going to be anything but in the main?
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that that's a bad thing, because they bring synergies, they bring management experience, they bring a level of expertise which you can't otherwise get very often. Now, when we look at the buying ecosystem, then you usually have national, regional, and local buyers. The most challenging to deal with are the local buyers.
Right.
So it's the same as a financial planner. The most challenging clients to work with are not the ones with the most money, usually. It's the ones with the least amount of money, because they have a level of misunderstanding or naivety or whatever it is that, it just means that you are having to work harder with them. And so I've had 3 deals in 4 or 5 years and fall through, just 3. 2 of them we picked back up and went again.
Right.
2 of them were from local buyers. And because they didn't know what they didn't know. Now, I represent the best interests of the seller.
Yeah.
So I can't and won't advise the buyer. I will, however, tell them if they're doing something which is fundamentally wrong. And one seller I had, one story I have is that the seller already knew the buyer. We lined them up, put them up against each other, and he was kind of in the middle of the road, this buyer. And there's a really strange relationship. He wouldn't deal through us. He said, "No, I just deal with seller direct." And I said, "No, we're engaged by the seller to represent the seller." He said, "No, no, no, I'm going direct to the seller." So
Red
red
flag.
flag,
Yeah,
red flag.
yeah.
And then there was various other aspects, various other things that he said, or with things that he dealt with. And I turned around to the seller and said, "Look, don't take this the wrong way. I know you guys know each other and you've got healthy respect for each other, but this deal is bad."
Hmm.
He said, "What do you mean?" I said, and we talked about it and debated it backwards and forwards. And I said, "Look, I'm going to leave this with you. How many red flags do you need to see before you don't go in the water?" He said, "One." So I've outlined seven, 6 or 7 to you very clearly here. And I just get a sense that this will go bad at some point. So my advice to you, my counsel to you, is to pause, at the very least pause, because he was a network member as well. And so he thought about it for 24 hours, and he said, "Okay, we're gonna proceed." So okay, all right, gonna proceed to heads. So proceeded to heads, and we've got 12 weeks to do this. I said, "Whatever you do, don't hand in your notice to the network until you've exchanged. Otherwise, you're going to fall in between a rock and a hard place." But he resigned because the seller, the bar, said to him,
You
"We're
should do
gonna,
this. Yeah.
we need to get you resigned." And da da da. With 7 weeks to go, the bar calls him and says, "There's a problem with funding. You can't get the funds." I don't think he ever had the funds, genuinely.
Mm.
And but we hadn't been able to validate that, which is one of the red flags
Yeah.
before we started. And he'd resigned from the network. And he got on the phone, bless him, and he said to me, the seller said to me, "Brian, I know you're going to say, you're thinking, I told you so."
Of course. Yeah.
Right. He said, "If I take this to my grave, this is a huge lesson. I need to listen when people with that perspective that I don't have can advise me that this is possibly not in my best interest." So I tried my very best not to write that buyer a stroppy email, but it got the better of me.
Well, so you did.
I
Yeah.
did, yeah. I was just, I thought it was so unprofessional,
Yeah.
so unprofessional.
Hi, just a quick pause. If you're getting value from this episode, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit subscribe and leave a rating or a review. It's honestly the best way to support the show, to help more people find it, and to make sure that future episodes get even better based on your feedback. Thanks for being here, and now back to the show.
To
But
do
again, it shows this issue. If you're going to hire somebody, like in your case, or a financial planner,
Yeah.
trust them.
trust
There's no
them to do the
point.
job. Yeah,
I remember a client saying to me years ago, a phrase I always remembered: "There's no point in having a dog and bark yourself." That's not
exactly right. Yeah,
not suggesting that you're a canine in any way, but you know what I mean.
yeah,
You hire somebody to
of course.
navigate those things, and this is the point as well. Your seller there, he can't see what you can see
No,
from an objective viewpoint.
no, not
I
at
think
all.
that's that. And so lessons were learned, money was spent or wasted somewhat, and then
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and on we go.
yeah.
Um, there's a chapter in your book, which is around. I think this is a really important part. If you're a seller, kind of a year or two out, is sort of
Mm,
start with what you want.
yeah,
Start with what you want, and get really clear on that.
yeah.
And I guess that starts with numbers. You
It does. And this is something for, be it financial planners or not financial planners listening to this.
Yeah,
Work out what the net position is that you need to be in after consideration is paid, assuming that it doesn't all get paid. So let's assume worst case scenario.
right,
And let's say you only get paid 80% of what you thought,
right,
and work from that basis. Now, I think virtually all of our clients had at least 100, some 120, some 150% of the payout they were expecting. But let's just assume worst case scenario.
yeah,
In your financial plan, work that out. What does that look to your cash flow, to your avoidance, to your cash flow planning, if that doesn't work out? If you haven't done your own financial plan on the basis of that, you shouldn't be
even
starting this,
starting the
even
conversation.
starting it.
So on the basis that find out how much money you need, classic financial planning,
Exactly.
how much money you need in order to be financially independent. Don't
Correct.
Won't need to work again for the rest of your life. Of course, you may choose to work, but
Yeah.
it's you've got optionality.
Yeah.
I think that's what everyone wants is a bit of independence, a bit of
Yeah.
optionality around it.
Yeah.
So find out. So that's the question of, what's the cost of your lifestyle? What are the kind of capex you're predicting? Are you
Yeah.
want to, I don't know, help your kids in a property ladder, buy a holiday
Yeah.
home, all those things, throw them in the mix.
Yeah.
Reverse engineer that, hit a number, because it all distills down to one number.
Mm.
And I guess that's your ideal scenario. And then
Mm.
if you want to discount it again, say if I get 80% of that number, I'm still kind of good to go.
Yeah.
At least that creates a framework
Yeah. Correct.
when you go into the conversations and negotiations. Anything above that is positive, and
Yeah.
as much as possible within
Yeah.
reason,
Yeah.
provided you're not too, that you're not compromising your deal. But above that is good. But less than that, you're not completely financially secure. And
Mm.
by the way, you no longer own this asset, which
Yeah.
has been thrown off income for you for the
Yeah.
last however many years.
Correct.
So you start with that process.
Start with your financial plan, your
Yeah.
personal financial plan, and then work out what are the criteria that are going to impact that. So it might be, well, I've got a limited company, and if it's a share sale, it can look like this. But if it's an asset sale, it has to be 30-40% higher to achieve the same net position.
Because
Because they're not going to, because if you do an asset sale out of a limited company, you've then got capital corporation tax to take off,
yeah,
and you've got to take the money out. You're going to lose at least 40% in tax.
right. So that's a tax implication of how
Tax
your
implication.
company's structured and how the eventual exit will be structured.
Yeah.
Hence the need to really start thinking about this, because if you're
Yeah.
going to have to restructure your corporate setup, you're
Yeah.
going to need a bit of time.
You're going to need a couple of years usually to
Yeah,
do
yeah,
that properly, I think.
yeah.
And so if someone's an LLP or a sole trader, then life is a little bit easier in some
Right.
respects, although if you're a sole trader, maybe not always. But so starting with the end in mind, what does it need to look out on your financial plan? What income do you need to derive from that? Maybe you don't. Maybe people are self-sufficient. But what does that need to look like? Because then when we're going into negotiation for a seller, then I know a penny under this doesn't work.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
a very
Yeah.
strong position to be in,
Exactly.
and I know then from a negotiation point of view, when I'm sat down with buyers, that what's the likelihood of them hitting 100%
Yeah.
of the deferred consideration or earn out? Who's in control of that? What's the impact of market movements, of staff leaving, etc.? All these aspects come into the whole deal. So one aspect that a lot of sellers get fixated on, I completely understand why, is the multiple.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, what do you get? I got 4 times. I've got one deal at the minute. It's on a 4.5 times recurring revenue. I've got another one that's on a 10 times EBITDA. That's like trying to get a cat to ride a bicycle. It's completely different
Yeah.
metrics, and it's a complete illusion for people to be able to compare
Yeah.
that on a like-for-like basis. It's almost impossible.
Yeah.
And none of it is in relation to how much you actually really get paid. It's the deal in its entirety. Again, my dad would say the deal isn't done until the last penny is in the bank account of your choosing.
Yes.
So it means you need to look at what the metrics are. And so one of the worst, well, but I won't say worst thing, but a challenging thing to do is to have a business valued on EBITDA, so profit after adjustments, and then have no control of that.
Right. Yeah.
Right? I've seen DIY deals in particular like that, where people have called me and said, Brian, they weren't my client, but they've called me and said, Brian, this deal's gone wrong. It was through a broker. What do
So
I
you
do?
mean in terms of the deferred consideration? You mean so you get your first payment,
Yeah.
presumably. Deferred consideration, so an EBITDA multiple.
Yeah.
You've got no control over how that's calculated.
No.
Adjustments are made down the line. Sorry, you didn't hit the numbers.
Yeah.
But
Sorry, mate.
you had no impact.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry, mate.
I mean, these are just,
Yeah.
small things in theory,
Yeah.
but massive, completely theoretically, life-changing things
Yeah.
if you get this wrong.
Yeah. I had a conversation with a buyer. We were negotiating it on this deal. And I said, what's your client retention rate? He said, 100%.
Yeah.
100% of the clients retain. Really? He said, yeah, and we attract more. I said, excellent. That's really, really good. And just asked them to expand on that, how they did that, how they validated it, etc. And I said, that's very impressive. If we needed to interrogate this, you can stand by them. I said, I said, good. So why are we doing deferred consideration? Because the deferred consideration is there to protect you against client attrition. You just told me you don't get client attrition, so why are we doing deferred consideration?
Yeah.
At which point he went slightly white, slightly pale,
Yeah.
when he realised backed himself into a little corner
Yeah.
there, because the framework here is to be open and honest with people,
Yeah.
both buyers and
Yeah.
sellers. And we do that on the basis of data. I'm not interested in opinion. I'm not interested in beliefs. I just want to see data.
Yeah.
If we can't validate it by data, it's hot air. It really is. And so, in terms of the process that we use, that we do what you might call reverse due diligence, in that we do due diligence before we go to market.
Yeah.
So we spend usually 3 months, maybe even 6 months, getting everything together before we go to market. Number one, it saves time later, makes you look incredibly credible to the buyers. And the buyers are able to put in offers before they even meet the seller. That's a prerequisite of dealing with through Pathfinders, is that we usually have between 7 and 10 offers simultaneous at the same time. Not sure why I had to explain that, but simultaneous offers on the table, all with all the buyers having the same information at the same time,
Right.
provided in the same way, and within a certain time frame.
Yeah.
And that means then that we create what is technically called a royal bun fight for the business, and deals that are likely to stick because they know they're in simultaneous competition.
Yeah.
And these people are well prepared.
Yeah. Creating competitive tension can be
Completely.
really important. And if the buyer really wants you, they're prepared to,
Correct.
within reason, bid up just to secure that deal. If
Correct.
they know they're competing with others.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is those buyers who really like this process.
Yeah.
And there's buyers there who will say, look, they had one buyer said to me recently, they had 17 introductions from one broker in 1 month, one of which was of interest. The
Right.
other 16 were, I'm 10 years out, I'm just kicking tires.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was nothing to go. They get 2 introductions from us, and both are firms ready to go,
Mm.
very credible. They've got their data rooms built. And one of the important things for us, for the buyers, is that the seller has paid to get to that point. So they pay us a fee to get them ready to go to market.
Sure.
And if you're just thinking about that, you ain't going to pay that figure at all.
Yeah.
It's not 500 quid.
Yeah. Yeah.
To get to that point.
Yeah.
So it means that the buyers know this seller is very serious, and they will aim to complete the deal as expeditiously as possible.
Yeah. So when it is presented to buyers, they know that these people are not tire kickers. They've invested time and money in order
Yeah.
to get here. They're serious about it. So they themselves, the buyers, are prepared to then
Yeah.
allocate resources and go ahead. It's not
Completely.
wasted time for them.
And the message that comes across that I wanted to get across with this is, it's an old army phrase, which is proper prior planning and preparation prevents a piss poor performance.
Yeah.
And it's all in the preparation.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you watch tennis. I watch
Yeah,
a
I
lot
do.
of tennis. Yeah. And they say that um, uh, the match is won before you even step on the court. And it's the same with mergers and acquisitions. So if you, of any respect, if you, doesn't matter if you have a financial advice business, accountancy firm, or electronics firm, or if you engage with buyers 2 minutes after you start thinking about it,
Yeah.
without any level of preparation, then the level of preparation you have is proportional to the value you have from that deal.
The success of the deal and the
The
value you'll actually get.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that. This is really interesting. It's a
Mm.
really sort of interesting experience. As I say, having read your book, a lot of this is coming out
Yeah.
in the book. Um, as we're kind of winding towards the end of our conversation, fascinating, honestly, really, really valuable. Just a couple of things I want to explore. In terms of so imagine you're speaking to one of those people who's a few years away. There's the classic was always 3 to 5 years away. Everyone
Yeah.
I know is 3 to 5 years away from selling,
Everybody.
and every year it's still 3 to 5 years. But
Yeah.
No one's getting any younger, and people are beginning to
Yeah.
get to apply more attention to this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, what are the, if are there kind of a handful of things that people ought to at least start thinking about,
Mm.
focus on, get sorted, including activities or structure and data
Yeah.
to
Data.
track?
Yeah.
What are those things? You're speaking to somebody 3 years away from an
Yeah.
exit. What do they need to get in place to maximize their sale
Sure.
value?
Well, we developed a service around this specifically because it's such an important piece, and always be ready to go. Think of you like your SAS or something.
Yeah.
You're ready to go, or fire brigade.
Yeah.
That buzzing goes. You are you
Yeah.
you you've done you know the drill.
Yeah. Even though you're just sort of you're sitting there playing cards or
That's
something, you're ready
right.
to go
You
as
are
soon as that
ready to
buzzer.
go
Yeah.
at any one time. We have three services which might help explain this. So we have the prime exit, which is people 1 to 2 years away, and we
Yeah.
take them through the process. Then we have fast track. Fast track is like prime exit, but in weeks, not months, for distressed businesses, those that are death or illness of the principal, uh, insolvency, or maybe regulatory pressures, etc. Something means we've got to complete pretty quickly. And then we have exit ready, stay ready. And this is where this taps in, because there is probably no stronger position than to be off market but ready to go. You know, to someone to be able to come along, because people say, well, yeah, if someone made me the right offer, then I'd
Yeah.
sell
Yeah.
up.
Sure.
It's like, but they're never ready. No one's ready. So exit ready, stay ready, and this applies to any business. Is to is I'll give you an example. Actually, I've got one firm we're working with. They want to sell for 5 million in 5 years. We've worked out today that they are worth 3.5 million. So are we going to take 5 years to get to 5 million? No, we're going to do it expeditiously, so that we're always ready to go for 5 million should we need to. Because we don't know what's going to happen with values in the next
Sure.
3 to 5 years. It
Yeah.
might drop down. And so, to answer your question on that, then, Alan, is data.
Right.
Absolutely key. Your numbers have to be all the holes filled. There needs to be squeaky clean. It needs to make sense without having someone explain it to me verbally.
Yeah.
The clients need to be. You need to be running profitable clients.
Yeah.
And what we found is that in most firms there is a tranche of clients, say 20-25% of clients, who deliver a correspondingly low revenue, usually unprofitable. Typically, 20% of clients deliver 5% of revenue.
Yeah.
So let's say Monday when you come into work, that's 5% of your revenue. It's all loss leading. So Mondays you lose money.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel very good. Fridays, 20% of your clients deliver 80% of your profit.
Yeah.
So my idea is, why don't we just work Fridays? It kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But these clients on the Monday will create a drag. We call it a long tail, but they create drag, and they drop the averages down
Sure.
on OAC, on AUM, on profitability. And so it's if you're able to do something with those clients that without obsessing people, be it do what we call a carve out, or put them onto transactional, or do something to make that look better. And we did this recently for a firm. I put it in on LinkedIn, and that freed up a day a week and brought in, I don't know, 800 to £1 million worth of capital into the business,
Right.
for them to reinvest into their staff and their training and their clients. Meanwhile, another firm that's very well set up to deal with these clients was like, great, I'll have this.
Sure.
Thanks. And
Okay.
we can bring that in. So making sure that those clients are, that your data is good, and making sure that when you pop the bonnet on it, it makes sense what you're doing,
Yeah.
and have consistency across how you're looking after clients. Define benefit transfers.
Yeah.
We have to talk about that. If you have a limited company and more than, say, 15% of your AUM comes from DB work, then I'm going to probably ask that seller to put pedal to the metal and dilute that by taking on more clients.
Right. Okay.
Because that is a risk that a lot of buyers, even today,
Yeah.
want to steer clear of. You might get to 20%, but it starts getting a bit,
So grow your revenue such that
incorrect. Yeah.
sometimes considered to be toxic part of your business
Yeah.
is a smaller part, is
Correct.
diluted. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So anything like that is going to cause certain buyers to go, you know what, actually, I'm not going to do a share sale or do an asset sale.
Yeah.
Suddenly your net positions drop down. Now, if you wait until 5 years' time to find this out, you are screwed.
Sure.
You need to be dealing with it today.
Yeah.
So looking to see what's going to hold you back, doing the data, doing all the audits you possibly can, compliance audits, file audits, being anally retentive with it, because the buyer will do this in due course. So either you do it and you control it, or buyer does it later and you'll pay for it. And then I suppose the final part to that is that although people say they're running a people business and they're doing it for the clients and the rest of it, it is regulated financial planning business. It is still a business,
Yeah.
and if we don't treat it like that, you can't expect people to pay for it
Mm.
like that. And so the most successful sales that we're involved in are the most boring business, are the most boring.
Yeah.
They don't have flashy this and flashy that necessarily. Not that that stops them doing that, but they just deliver simple service,
Yeah.
simplified services, if you like, to clients who they understand intimately. They have a recurring revenue that's very sticky, and it's a profitable business that's valued by clients. And we can evidence all of that by data. And if you can't evidence it by data, then it's on a wing and a prayer.
Right.
That makes sense.
So really, in summary, it is all about data.
Data.
I mean, in your book, you've got a very handy towards the end of it. I mean, it's sort of with a list
Yeah.
of the sort of things you ought to be putting
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is most businesses have got this data somewhere.
Yeah, they
in the
do.
business.
Yeah.
It's not really, if someone asks you send it to me today,
Yeah.
you might need a couple of days to put it together, but
Yeah.
begin to focus on that. Yeah.
I mean, the interesting thing is that virtually all the businesses we speak to, by the time they've gone through our preparation, diagnostic prep stage, they say they've never known so much about their business.
Sure.
Even
Yeah,
though they've
yeah.
been running it for 20, 30 years,
Sure.
it's brought stuff out. Well, actually, they can feel quite proud of it,
Sure. Yeah.
but otherwise it's like playing all the right notes, but in the wrong order,
Sure. Yeah.
So we want to create a symphony, as opposed to something else at the other end. I can't think of
Cacophony, just
that's the word.
noise. Yeah.
Noise, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the way you play here is not the way you run the business isn't the way you sell the business.
That
Makes
is
sense.
really important. The way you run the business is different to the way you sell the business.
Correct.
Yeah. And you take on a different persona then.
Yeah.
I imagine you're now somebody who's
Yeah.
selling a valuable asset.
Yeah.
This has been brilliant, Brian. At this stage of the conversation, I often ask people about resources they've got, books they might have read,
Yeah.
podcasts, but I
Yeah.
think the answer is, in your circumstances, your book, which again,
Well, that would make me a self-licking lollipop if that
you could
was
be.
me. But there's one book that's come out fairly recently. I
Okay.
really enjoyed by a guy called Jefferson Fisher. He's a trial attorney in the States. Does TikTok, and he has podcasts and books. And his book, I wrote it down so I couldn't actually remember the name of it. The next conversation is called.
Okay.
The one thing I've learned from that book is to pause. When someone says something, let them say it. I'm really bad at this. I jump
Me
in
too.
all the time.
Yeah.
It's the first thing you should say should be nothing, and to pause and let it sink in. And I think as financial advisors, we tend to be pretty good at listening, but the curiosity is extended when we actually just pause. And so the one thing if I could leave anything with someone who's still listening at this point,
Yeah.
is in your next conversation, try not to say anything, just pause and breathe and let them finish.
Yeah. It's brilliant. I'm trying to do that now.
I know.
Because we're often very keen just to jump in.
Yeah.
A lot of us are kind of solution oriented, or we want to just get to the point quickly. So it's very common people don't even wait to finish the other person's sentence and before people are rushing in.
Mm.
That sounds very interesting. I'm an avid reader of books. I'll put that on my list. I'll put the link to that in the show notes for this episode. I'll also, of course, put the link to your book, which is doing well. I see on Amazon with a number of 5-star reviews. I'll put that if anyone wants to buy it. I certainly recommend it. It's been very, very, very useful for any business owner who's going to exit, because everyone exits.
Yep.
Everyone exits at some point. The question, if you've listened to a few episodes, it's always one question that I end, and I think you're particularly, in a great position to be able to answer this based on the journey that you've been on, because people often talk about wealth, the concept of wealth, and I've just got my own views on the real meaning of true wealth.
Mm.
What's your own personal definition, Brian, of true wealth?
Time. I don't think I'm alone in that. Time to be able to do the stuff you want to do and add value to those you want to add value to is key. And since selling the business, actually, I wish I'd done it years before. Although, of course, I couldn't have done without having that experience, because it means I can give time to colleagues and comrades across the profession who are facing the same dilemma that I faced back in 2018, 2019, helping them do it to the best of their position, best of our ability, so that they can turn around and post completion and say, that was a good thing to do. I did it right. And look at my life now.
It's all about time,
Time.
isn't it? True wealth is time. Absolutely agree. Brian, if anyone is watching or listening to this and wants to get in touch with you, wants to reach out, sort of pick your brains a little bit, what's the best way of getting in contact with you?
LinkedIn is a great one.
Okay.
Direct on the website, but usually LinkedIn. I'm on that too often.
Yeah, great. Yeah, you and me both.
Yeah.
We'll put a link to your LinkedIn
Yeah, thank
profile
you.
and also to your website, and the company's name is
Pathfinders.
Pathfinders. We'll put a link to that so people can find you, and if they want to, get in touch, have a
Great.
conversation.
Super.
Brian,
Thank you.
for now, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.